photographs there showing you from the time you were a baby, the changing face and the changing shape of the person we all know as June Smith. You're widely admired by deaf people as a leader in the deaf, gay and lesbian community, and you're well known as a teacher of British Sign Language. If you look back in time, do you think the young June Smith would have imagined her life turning out like that?
When I was young, I probably thought I'd follow my mother, working in electrical welding like a lot of deaf people. Most of the deaf people we knew were machinists, carpenters, cobblers, painters and decorators. Women never thought beyond that then. Later at Durham University, to my amazement, I became a teacher. Me, a teacher. I couldn't believe it.
What were your family like?
Well, my parents were deaf. My older brother, me and my younger sister are all deaf, so the house was full of signing. It was lovely. My parents' families were all hearing, so we were the only two generations of deafness. My sister and I both have hearing children, and my brother doesn't have any, so we don't know what he might have had. So that's the end of the deaf line, which is a shame, really. I'd have loved it to carry on.
Your brother is 2 years older than you, and your sister is 7 years younger. How did you all get on?
That's right. My brother's older. I was much closer to him than my sister because of the age difference. We went everywhere together, with Mum and Dad to the deaf clubs. I used to tell my brother everything. But now we're not very close. It feels a bit like I've lost an arm. I'm much closer to my sister now, because as you get older, the age gap doesn't matter so much. So we're very close, and I really value her company and conversation. I thank God that I've got a deaf sister.
So let me take you back to just after the war. You were born in 1950, in London, North Kensington. What was life like for your family and your parents back then?
Oh, my mum and dad had quite a hard life back then. The wages were poor, but they were good to us. They took us out all the time. We never missed a visit to the deaf club. They took us to deaf clubs all over the place. And we always had lots of deaf people visiting us. They took us on holidays as well, to a place I think called Laysdown. It was a holiday camp, well, a bit like an army camp. We used to go there all the time, until some deaf person pinched something. Then we stopped, never went again, when I was about 10.
So you went to deaf clubs, and you had a lot of deaf friends visiting. Then you went to school, and that was a bit of a shock, wasn't it?
I remember I was 2 when I started school. Akmar Road was my first school. I went to 4 schools altogether. So, when I was 2, I went there. I was very excited because my brother was already there, so I knew it, and I'd always wanted to know what it was like. I went into the nursery and he was in the older school, and I was shocked because none of the other children signed. I was the only one. Anyway, the nursery teacher was asking us what colours different things were, and I knew them, blue, red, green and so on, so I signed what they were, and the other children were amazed that I knew, but the teacher was furious. She put me in the corner. Every time I came out, she'd send me back to the corner. She wouldn't let me play with the other children because she was frightened I would influence them and they would start signing. It was an awful experience. I couldn't understand why.
The language you used in school came from your parents. What kind of things did your dad tell you?
My dad was a great joker, but, for example, you know children's storybooks? He would tell me about Humpty Dumpty, and his version was different from the teacher's. He said that Humpty was deaf, and he was sitting on a wall, and these hearing children came along and pushed him off because he was deaf. So I'd go to school and tell the other children this story. The teacher said, "No, that's not the story," but the other children believed me. The teacher was livid because my dad told a different story. Same with Jack and Jill went up the hill. My dad said 2 deaf children were walking up the hill, some hearing children pushed them and they went tumbling down. That's not the right version, but I believed him.
Your father encouraged you to stand up for yourself, but that sometimes got you into trouble at school, didn't it?
All 4 of my schools labelled me as having behaviour problems because I use sign language. My whole family signed, so no way could I speak. But I was put in classes where most of the children were hard of hearing. I couldn't understand why I wasn't in the other class where the teachers signed. I wanted to be in there, but I couldn't. I had to try and lip read the teacher. Years later, when I left school, I found out that the class you were put in depended on your hearing level. I can hear a bit, not great, but I have some hearing. So that's why they put me in those classes, which were wrong for me. They weren't thinking about my abilities. I was never taught in sign language. My father had a very strong deaf identity. He loved being deaf, having deaf friends in the house. He was always looking for job opportunities for other deaf people. An awful lot of them owed their jobs to him.
It was because you got into trouble at school that you were sent to Margate School, wasn't it?
That's right. My brother as well. We were both sent to Margate. He shouldn't have had to go. It should only have been me. The school thought I was badly behaved because I signed. I was always being given black marks. I never got a star for anything in my life. It was black marks all the time because I signed. My brother was the same, but I got more black marks. I loved going out playing on my bike, just on my own, enjoying myself. My brother preferred to stay indoors because he didn't like the other kids making fun of him. Anyway, I was out one day when this gang of kids started coming towards me, so I pedalled away like mad into the park. They followed me, so I broke a branch off a tree and started swinging it round my head. That frightened them off, and I raced home on my bike. Next thing, the flashing doorbell goes, and it was somebody from the council with the police. They told my mum I'd been brandishing a knife or something. My mum asked me, and I said I didn't, but the other children all said I did. So they accused me of having a knife. In one room, we had a pair of crossed swords on the wall. It was fashionable then, and they thought I'd used them. I couldn't possibly have got up there and unscrewed them. The council said that if my mother refused, she would go to prison. So I had to go to Margate School, and my brother with me. He was really hacked off about it. So we were at Margate for 2 years.
After 2 years at Margate, you moved to Oak Lodge School and then to Heston. And that was where something terrible happened to you.
That's right. Heston was my 4th school. And I think that was the worst. None of the children signed at all. They were all oral. So in the classroom, the teacher would be speaking away and I hadn't a clue what she was saying. The other children would all be writing down what she'd said, and I was lost. I said I didn't understand, and the teacher said, "Don't worry, tomorrow I'll put you in a different class." I was pleased. I thought maybe it would be better with a teacher who could sign. I was looking forward to it, but when I got there, I was horrified. The class was full of young children from about 2 to 4, maybe 5 years old. The desks and the chairs were very low. I was about 14 at this time, and there was all this tiny furniture. I was so upset and angry. I ran away, and I never went back. I was only there for about 6 months, so I left school at 14.
So after all these terrible experiences at school, what kind of jobs did you do?
My first job was as a punch operator, punching holes in cards. A deaf person taught me how to do it, and I learnt very quickly. Then I worked in various factories. My longest job was working for a printer, same as my mum. I worked for a printer called Peter Jones, which was part of the John Lewis Group. I worked there for 15 years.
So you've left school, you're working. Then when you were 17, something awful happened. Tell us about that.
Yes, I was 17. I was always going out, deaf rallies, different deaf clubs all over the place, you know. A friend of mine was having a birthday party in Cambridge, so I went there. And I was enjoying myself, having fun. But then I was raped. How it happened, a friend of mine was lying on the ground outside and somebody suggested I should go out and see what was wrong. At the back of the pub, there were open fields. I went out and saw my friend lying on the ground, and all of a sudden I was attacked from behind. I woke up about 2 in the morning. My knickers and clothes were all over the place, and I knew I'd been raped. But I tried to cover it up. I went back and my friend woke up and asked me what had happened. I said I didn't know. I had a shower to get rid of the mud and blood in my hair and all over. I didn't want to know. I just thought, I hope nothing happens. I hope. But then I started to get bigger and I realised I was pregnant. 6 months later, when I found out, my family was shocked. Well, they wanted to know what had happened, but I couldn't tell them. I was too embarrassed. It was 1968. It was too late to have an abortion and my mother wouldn't have allowed it anyway. I was in pieces. I was so young. So when I was 18, my son was born. And now he's 46. My mum really brought him up. And he was hearing. My dad was annoyed, hearing. But they grew to really love each other because my dad loved to watch TV. And there were no subtitles then. So my dad would tell us what they were saying. And we thought he was always right, but my son could hear, so he would correct him. They didn't say that. So my father got really pissed off.
You had your son Mark. You were a single mother. It must have been unsettling. What did you feel about the reactions of deaf people at that time?
I did suffer a lot of criticism from deaf people at the time. I was kicked out of one deaf club when he was born. I got a lot of abuse. It's a small community and a lot of deaf people had a go at my mother. Also, that was when I came out as a lesbian, and people couldn't get their heads around that. Lesbians were taboo at that time, not like now. It's much more open-minded. It was different then. I did get it in the neck. I remember I was very depressed. I didn't get any help. The hospital didn't give me any support. All they wanted to know was who the father was, and I didn't know. So I thought it was best to put it behind me and concentrate on bringing up my son. Not let it prey on my mind, just be positive. I've no idea who his father was.
So you came out as a lesbian. When did you realise you were lesbian?
I always knew I was different. When I looked at grown-ups around me, I knew I wouldn't get married like them. I couldn't imagine that. I once asked my mum, when I grow up, can I go with a girl? My mum said, get away. As I got older, I did have some boyfriends, but not many girls. It wasn't allowed in this country, so I had to go to Holland every weekend, Amsterdam, on a cheap ferry ticket. You were free to be gay or lesbian there. That went on for a long time until things became freer in this country and London. So we could be free and mix together here. But I've always been a lesbian.
In 1978, you and a few other deaf gays and lesbians got together and set up the Brothers and Sisters Club. Did you have problems with the reactions of other deaf people and hearing people as well?
When the Brothers and Sisters started, the deaf community was very hostile. There was a lot of backstabbing. It was a good job we were a close-knit group. Hearing people mocked us as well. They called us puffs, lesbians, lesies, and so on. We just ignored them because we were a strong group. We were happy amongst ourselves. I think the club will be 40 soon, and it's still going strong. Maybe not so many women now, but there are still lots of men who keep it going. Lots of young, new faces coming through. I still go along for special events. It's nice to see people. I was involved in running it for 25 years, but I've retired now. Well, not so much retired as just taking a back seat and leaving it to the younger members to keep it going.
Around 1988, you were approached to go to Durham University. Can you tell us how that changed your life?
1986. Durham changed my life. Well, it certainly changed my attitude a bit. I got to understand my language better. I learnt about linguistics and meaning. All the new information gave me more confidence to challenge hearing people. Before I get into arguments, but I was using the wrong information. But with the information from Durham, I could challenge hearing people because I had the facts to base it on. If they said anything, I could give them informed answers. I had all this information from Durham about what research had proved, so it did change my attitude. I could hold my own in a conversation and express my own needs, express who I am. Before, I'd been a bit insecure because I didn't have the evidence. Now I had it. And I enjoyed that.
At the end of the Durham University course, when you got your qualification, how did you feel?
When they gave me the qualification, I was ecstatic because all through my school days, I'd been told I was bad, I was a failure. I'd never had a qualification in my life. Only one for beautiful handwriting. That's all, but nothing else. So when I got the qualification from Durham, I wish my father could have been alive to show it to him. My mother knew, and she was proud, but my father never knew. The first qualification I ever had in my life. Maybe I should have put it on the wall, but I put it inside a book and a drawer for safekeeping. I've had other qualifications since then, from Signature and others, but I don't have the same pride in them. My certificate from Durham is the one that I'm proud of when I became a teacher. The others are different.
You've told us how you felt about qualifying as a teacher, but what about your students? They gave you something as well, didn't they?
Oh, yes. I've been teaching them about colours, and we got on to talking about school experiences. So we talked about what everyone's school was like, and I told them how I'd never got any stars. It was always black marks against my name. Rows and rows of black marks. My brother got them too, but I got more. I never got a star. I'd no idea what it was like to get one. They said it was cruel, but I said that's how it was. And it was only because I signed. It went on, and I got punished for it. So when the class finished, off they all went. Then they all bought a giant star for me, and they put messages on it saying what a wonderful teacher I was, and about my skill, knowledge and experience, and so on. It was enormous, and I just burst into tears. I couldn't stop crying. It was such a shock, just getting all this praise after being criticised all my life. It was such a turnaround. It had such an impact on me. I was so grateful to them. I realised the ability I did have. At school, nobody ever recognised my ability. It was so different.
So this language you've used all your life, BSL, what are your hopes for the future for BSL learners and teachers?
I hope in future BSL will be recognised, like in Scotland. It's amazing what's happened there, though we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. I hope that influence is here so that attitudes change for the better. In the main, it's hearing people who control the lives of deaf people. We need to be on an equal footing. Maybe the new legislation will bring more equality and we'll see deaf schools opening. Maybe even deaf clubs opening. The worst thing has been deaf schools closing and deaf children losing their deaf identities. I have a strong deaf identity and I'd like to pass on what that means. They can't fit into a hearing mould. They should know themselves as deaf, and they can't unless they have role models. We need something like the Scottish Bill to show that deaf people can qualify as teachers and get more deaf people working in schools in all kinds of roles so that we're all the same. We're all equal, deaf and hearing, fully equal, with no inequality.
Back to you now. 46 years ago, your son Mark was born. Do you think you've been a good mother?
When my mother died, I became Mark's only mother, his younger mother. He turned to me for everything. He still loves his grandmother very much. She'll always be number one. But now he calls me his mother. So I'm his mother and a lesbian. That's a bit of a conundrum for him. It's quite difficult for him. He knows I'm a lesbian. My grandchildren know. Thankfully, they all accept me for who I am. But to put my lesbianism to one side and say I'm a mother is quite difficult for me. People are very surprised when they find out I have a son. Most people don't know. I've never gone around telling everybody about it.
Now, a few years ago, the June Smith everyone knew was rather a large person. But you've lost a lot of weight. What's behind that?
Yes, most people were shocked. I think it's a bit like Father Christmas. Nobody expects him to be thin. Same with me. I've been big for years, so they didn't like the idea of me being thin. Well, some people liked it. But I had a problem with my knee. I went to the hospital. I wanted an operation, a knee replacement, but they said I couldn't have it. I was too overweight. The operating table wasn't big enough, and there'd be a risk to my heart as well. Anyway, they agreed to give me a gastric bypass. Not a gastric band, a bypass. So I found out 2 other deaf people had had it. And after I talked to them, 2.5 years ago, I agreed to go for it. The operation was awful, one of the worst experiences of my life. I think it's because I'm older. It's more successful with younger people. I was in agony. I had to go back for surgery a second time, then a third time. I couldn't eat. I was sick if I ate the smallest morsel. I could only eat food that was pureed like baby food. I was constantly sick. I thought it was going to go on forever. I thought, what a fool. Why did I ever get it done? Idiot. But then it settled down. Now I can eat fine. My knees have improved as well. I had some injections, but I didn't need to have the replacements. Maybe later, but there's plenty of time. I can walk better now. There are pluses and minuses, of course. The positives are I can walk well, my breathing's better, and I can bend down more easily. But I'm not very fit. I do feel the cold more, and I catch colds and infections and get ill more easily. When I was fat, the positives were I was fit. I always had rosy cheeks. I never have them now. But the downside was I got breathless walking up the stairs, and if I bent down, I had a rush of blood to the head. Getting out of a chair was difficult. It's easy now. So there are some negatives and some positives. Some deaf people like me slimmer, others don't. My partner doesn't. When she met me, I was big. Now there's not so much to cuddle. But I've put on nearly a stone recently, and she says, oh, be careful, don't put on too much. So maybe secretly she prefers me slim. The brilliant thing is, I can buy lots of clothes now. They fit me. The things I liked always used to be too small, and I had to order them online from America, get them delivered through websites, and it was expensive. Now I can buy things cheap, off the peg. It's amazing. So I'm quite proud, thanks to my gastric bypass.
For over 30 years, you've been in a relationship with your partner, Francis Elton, a BSL teacher, teacher trainer and linguist. Now that the law has changed, have you ever thought about getting married?
That's right. We've been together over 30 years. I'd love to get married, and so would Francis. She did actually try to propose to me, but it was too dark for me to see what she was saying, so she dropped it. So it's over to me now to ask. I'm sure she won't ask me a second time. I just haven't got round to it yet. I know the law's changed so lesbians and gays can get married just like straight people, but the married couples tax allowance is only 1.5. So if the two of us only get 1.5, what have we been working for all these years? It's different if people get married, have children, take years off work while the children are growing up, and the tax allowance is 1.5. With us, which of us would be the half? We've both had good jobs and we've got good pensions, so which is the half? So we could get married. We might shock people with a last-minute wedding, or not, who knows? But I would like to get married, you're right.
Suppose you could go back in time and see your younger self, little June as you were, the girl who was always getting into trouble. What would you say to her?
What would I say? I'd say you can. You can do it. Don't say you can't, because you can. Yes, she was naughty, but it was because she wanted something to do to keep her mind active and help her relax. She wanted something to interest her, that matched her interests. Not to be told no all the time. That was just a waste. Encourage her to do something she wants to do.
So now, how do you see the future?
How do I see my future? I'm glad to have a deaf sister and a deaf brother. I hope he'll get in touch with me, but I don't know. My partner's deaf, and I'm very proud that we're all deaf. I want deaf children in the future to have a strong deaf identity and to have deaf culture in their bones. They can't forever be copying the hearing way. If they do, what will happen to deaf people's culture? It'll be wiped out. I don't want that to happen. I want it to carry on. I want BSL to carry on. I want a new law embracing BSL, and for every school to teach BSL, for all hearing people to learn BSL everywhere. That's my dream. Before I leave this earth, that's what I'd like to see. Also, Francis and I must go on a cruise round the world. We've travelled all over, but I would like a cruise. No more backpacking and hiking. Now I want a first-class cruise round the world. We're thinking about it once we've both retired and sorted out the money. We'll see.